I'm Chad Jackson, the CEO and Chief Analyst at Lifecycle Insights. Our research is showing us that the biggest challenges with engineering transformation isn't technology-focused. It's actually people-centered and resistance-oriented. We believe that today's change agents need more than just a project plan. They need research, classes, organizational assessments, and role-based insights. We're starting an early access program called the Founders Council, where we collaborate with partners to upskill and enable change agents. If that seems like a fit, book a meeting with me at lifecycleinsights.com. And now, on to the show. Tracy Rupp, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hi, Chad. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. We're going to focus on system engineering and MBSE. But before we jump into that, it's always good context to kind of understand the background of you, kind of where you came from, what's your professional journey look like, and what are you doing now? What are you responsible for today?
Cool. Well, my name is Tracy Rupp. I'm a program chief engineer and a systems engineer by training and trade. I currently work at L3Harris. While I don't speak for the company, I'm very excited to share my journey with your audience. I lead a team of engineers to do design, innovations, test, and eventually deliver mission systems for ground and airborne platforms. I'm responsible for the technical leadership and of the executions and growth of the products. So in a sense, someday my job is pretty technical. I go through a bunch of review and analysis and making sure design is sound. Other days, I might lead the team to apply the right processes to our product to make sure the quality is good and it makes sense. So other day, my job can be just connecting and communicating and creating alignment to avoid conflicts and make sure objectives is good. And some other day, I might be cranking out proposals and authenticating our strategy roadmap. But all of this is cool. And the most exciting part of my job is really finding better ways to enable my team to do their job better and easier. Right now, all the little fun exercise I do to find efficiency is what can I do with AI and how can I do it better with AI? So it has been super fun.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah. It sounds like, I hear that a lot with engineering leadership, that you got to wear a lot of different hats or changing hats throughout the day. And also that soft skills are super, super important. When you're managing people, you want to get people aligned and coordinated. So I'd love to get your perspective. Like when you shifted from being an individual contributor to managing a team, especially for engineering, what was that transition like for you? Completely smooth? Like, what were some of the spots where you had to, I love to laugh. What was the biggest adjustment that you had to go through when you made that change?
Well, it took a while. If you talk to the team that I first lead as like a very junior leader compared to now, I think is night and day. The biggest change will probably be really understanding the team members and how can I help them and what they are looking forward to. I definitely have junior team members who is looking for more of that technical guidance, understanding the process from one step to the other. I have more senior engineers who just like, Tracy, stay away from me. I know what I'm doing, which is perfectly fine. So it's really just working with the people, and the more I work with people, the easier it is to understand what kind of help they need, if any at all. And I would say my systems engineering background has helped me a lot on that front. Specifically, especially working with a junior engineer, and you see them, okay, they know how to do a particular step, but they don't necessarily see what's coming next and what are the pitfalls that might be right in front of them if they choose this implementations versus the other implementations. And that's where I step in and help.
That's great. Oh, that's great. Excellent. So, you're in the aerospace and defense industry. Was that always the goal for you? Did you know you wanted to go in those types of applications, or was it a journey that kind of led you there? What did that look like?
Well, I would say I basically tumbled into engineering because I was good at math. And I was in a town where aerospace and defense engineering is very popular and available. And so I tumbled into the industry. But most importantly, I think this industry is very mission driven. There are
Mm,
always a purpose behind it. And that's what like bring me back into how can I help all these people who are super passionate. Like they are super passionate. They always wanted to do better. So I love that environment and that's kind of keep me in this area. Um, I would say one of the things that is interesting is I was always surrounded by people who also want me to do well. And they see strengths of me that I don't even know I have sometimes and put me into different type of effort and initiative to build my skills. And through the year, I think I built up my tool belt pretty well. And so here I am trying to be a leader and bring out the next generations of engineers to do better.
that's great. That's awesome. I love to hear that. Mentorship is just so important, and especially the people that see the potential in you and draw it out. I think that's great when you're in that situation. You have the right mentor working with you. So kudos to you. That's great. Let's shift gears and talk about change agents. We always ask this question: how do you define a change agent? I'd love to hear your definition.
So to me, a change agent is someone who take actions that drive a positive, measurable outcome and invoke a lasting behavioral change in others. So, like a problem solvers that purposely improve the status quo. That's what I think a change agent is. And in a large organizations where thousands of people and a behemoth of systems and processes, and it's
Mhm.
probably running 24/7 globally, um, you need a small village of change agents to bring a purposeful, impactful solutions that actually last. So you probably need someone with a vision to set a path. You probably need some builders to create the solutions, refine the visions, build out governance and processes and training so that people can actually use what you're building and fulfill it from there. Um, Whether you're the one that's dreaming up a new way to solve the problem, or the one
Mhm.
testing out the process, or the early adapter of the solutions, to me, they are all change agents because you are driving a
Oh,
positive outcome that will last with a behavioral change associated to it. So
yeah.
it was super fun. I was very lucky to work with a handful of change agents that has big visions, other people who just build systems and enable me to do better. So it has been interesting to see what I can do from that front.
Yeah, that's great. Spectacular. Um, well, a very important, and especially for the rest of this kind of part of our podcast, a really important question is: do you see yourself as a change agent?
Yes. So, but in which role, there are so many of those that we just mentioned. Uh,
Yeah.
I see myself more of a builder and an early adapter. Um, For example, one of the things that I love doing early in my career is
Yeah, we'll edit that out. Don't worry. No worries. No worries. Perfectly fine.
so one of the more memorable projects in my early career is developing rapid prototype circuit cards. And one of the tasks I had is for a demo. Uh, Circuit card development is fascinating. If you look at your iPhone on your hand, there are bazillion electronics. You have a giant LED. You have multiple cameras. You have microphone, speakers, accelerometer. you have a 5G modem and then a super fancy system on the chip. And then you connect all of that with a logic board, a complex circuit board with functionality that is jam-packed with functions and the size of a fingernail. All of this part and functions need to fit on your hand. Like, that is amazing. Someone decided that they're going to process 50 layers of super thin material, laser etch them, and then stack them all up with resins, dump it in the oven, and voila, you have a very complex product out of very complicated design. This type of development and manufacturing process takes months usually. And for the demo, the engineer wanted this process to be completed in a couple of weeks. So we went to lunch. We sat down and started talking about what we were going to do in order to make it happen, right? And well, of course, we don't have paper, but we have napkins. We draw all the plan on a napkin over lunch, and it's kind of crazy, right? I was young, I was new, I didn't quite know exactly how we were going to do it, but you take a deep breath and you figure out the task. And so the first thing I did was find out what is the task that takes the longest time, and then eliminate the process that is not value added to this particular project. Start combining meetings and gain efficiencies and work with the team and the supplier hands off, making sure that at the end of the day, we can turn this napkin into an actual circuit card for the demo. And well, we made the demo. And in this process, I think I wasn't a change agent, but I was a problem solver.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
My mentors started putting me into initiatives of being an actual change agents. We start learning how to map our process, setting up organizational trace study. What are the performance indicators that are important, or what type of things do we really need to measure and optimize the workflow? I got invited to different type of initiatives like this to bring the learning back into the organizations. And that's kind of the first step of where I start closer to be a change agent instead of just individual contributor solving problems. And that hasn't changed since that type of time when I was a junior engineer.
That's great. That's spectacular. I mean, it's good to kind of, make a transition over into that over time and kind of get exposure to it, what it looks like to experience it before you start taking on more and more of a burden. Let's talk a little bit about success factors. There's lots of different things that can affect whether or not an initiative is successful or not. In your eyes, what are like the critical capabilities? What are the critical factors that affect whether or not an initiative is going to be successful or not?
So I think a successful initiative happens when you set up the initiative with a very specific goals, objectives, and ideally a metrics that you can measure. And if I can ask for the world, the initiative should allow multiple paths for a win-win situations so a lot of people can be successful at the same time.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah.
So one of the initiatives that I supported a while back is a grassroots talent upskill program where we were developing next generations of program leaders. The program it's connected multiple type of people to learn program management, to do mentorship type of exercise and different type of group exercise. And through that initiatives, I was able to build a set of connections and open up new opportunity for me to support as a program manager and apply all this learning into an actual role. Um, at the same it was super exciting. At the same time, I decided to stay with the initiative to give back to the community. This particular initiative has a very structural way to handle all the tasks. We have roles, we have goals and objectives, learning objectives, and training objectives, just like what we will have mentioned. We have regular meeting with talent development team on progress and alignment. It was actually really cool to learn something that as an engineer, I don't get to learn every day. And then COVID happened and threw a wrench on everything and everyone. So we have to make pretty quick decisions to realign our organizations, realign with our sponsors, and really prioritize what our core objectives are, and focus our team, our mentees, our mentors, and to really allow everyone to be successful at work, at home, and for themselves in such a volatile time. So the team decided to prioritize on hard skills and then delay all the in-person events, replan all of them. There was definitely a learning curve on how to communicate. Like at that time, we don't even know how to look at camera in meeting.
Yeah, it's true.
And it's really hard to make connections when you don't know how to use the technology.
Yeah. Oh, what a change that was. Yeah.
But the really cool thing is, I think we pivot pretty hard. We know exactly what our objectives are, what are important for the people in the program. And so the communications were timely, were clear, and was action focused. So not only we learn how to look at cameras when we do web meetings, we also got through all our learning objectives and continue moving forward and simplify and making sure we focus. And looking back, it was a very purposeful, impactful initiative that has an elegant communications.
It's great.
At the end of that initiative, at least at the end of my service of the initiative, we provided a talent base with 300 individuals with earned value management certifications and program management certifications. And it's still going on as far as I know.
Hey, that's great. I mean, program management is such a challenge, especially in the aerospace and defense industry. It's a place where a lot of companies have struggled, and that kind of change initiative is probably well-founded, and it's great to hear that it was so successful. That's really, really great. So for you personally, as a change agent in varying roles, what do you find most fulfilling? Like, what do you get the most enjoyment out of? Or what is fulfilling for you specifically?
As a change agent, I found it very fulfilling when I see the change deliver a positive experience for my engineers. One of the example was I was working for different type of leaders. There was a need for change. There's always a need for change, but this time we know that if we don't change, we probably won't be able to stay competitive. And that really drives changes.
Yeah, that drives changes for sure.
What they did, just like how we mentioned earlier, we start looking into how all the organizations work, how to map out processes. I remember I was in different type of meeting where we go to giant whiteboard, map out the entire process, circle out where it's inefficient, and what are the options we can make it better. I remember we were developing different type of training to make sure we address and provide this type of changes and the outcome and the process. I remember we did training initiative where we developed a specific learning program to communicate the new process and how it goes from one step to the next that is different than how we did it before. So all of these with specific feedback loop, measurable metrics, and everyone was just working on one piece at a time. And it was exciting for me. But one of the things that I remember very vividly was one of the team lead basically said, these metrics are unobtainable.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I mean, it was hard. I mean, we have a Verhapcast, and how do we make it happen? So we continue turning, but a couple of years later, I lead a team through this new refined process, and one of the team member at the time was the expecting parent. His skills and his task are critical, but his schedule is rigid. Well, was rigid, right? We defined definitions of done clearly. We leverage the flexibility of the rest of the team members, and we create a real support systems to make sure that he can get through his task while we also finish up our work. In one of our first review, design review, the meeting owner had most of the pre-work done already. And we found a handful of action items, just like how every meeting does. But one thing that was super cool for me is before the end of the hour-long meeting, 80% of the action item was wrapped up. This team know exactly what they need to do, where they find answers, when we have problems, how to solve it faster than any time before. I remember calling it was a 0-day action item, which never happened before we refined our process. So what made this transformation work? And it wasn't just a good idea. It wasn't one person forcing a change or demanding a change. It was a village of change agent and a collective attitude to make sure it pushed forward. Some of them are great at articulating their visions. Some of them are great at building trace study and tests and make sure that the problem is solved at the heart of the problem. Other are probably cheerleaders to make sure that the team lead who thinks it's impossible will continue moving forward. And it really does take a village to get there. Looking back, when I saw that day where we finished all the action item and knowing that the unobtainable metrics become obtainable, it was so fun, and it was the best feeling ever.
The resistance paradox: why successful transformations don't avoid friction, they navigate it. That's our latest research report. It delves into how practically every organization encounters moderate or greater resistance, but the ones that navigate that well with change agents encounter more success. You can get a copy at lifecycleinsights.com. Come, check it out. Let us know what you think. It'd be great to have feedback. And now, back to the show. Well, let's continue on. Let's dive into systems engineering. And for context here, I think it's important to talk a little bit about the competency within the organizations that you've been in. So for the companies you've worked for, have they had a long-standing kind of practice around systems engineering? Was it initiated when you joined? Like, what did that look like? Because that's important. That kind of provides a context for the rest of the conversation.
So all the company I work for has some sort of systems engineering. I would say everyone do systems engineering very closely with how aerospace and defense industry generally do it. I mean, DoD has guideline of how systems engineering is supposed to be done. At the same time, everyone do it a little differently.
The quiet, saying the quiet part out loud. That's what that is right there. Good. Keep going.
So I started as systems engineer without fancy toys and fancy tools. I remember I have templates, I have checklists, I have processes, I have PowerPoint.
Yeah.
But nothing really beat a design with domain expert in front of a giant whiteboard where we just engineer our heart out.
Yeah.
I think at one point I lovingly described myself as a PowerPoint engineer because
It's a communication tool.
it is the most convenient communications tool when you want to when you want to show a graphical representations of a systems where everyone can open the file.
Yeah. Yes.
And to iterate on a design, that communication tool is so important. So I did a lot of that, and
Yeah.
I think it's effective in a way that it allowed us to make sure design move forward. If we think about it, regardless of what kind of tool we have, the fundamental doesn't change. Kelly Johnson from Skunk doesn't get fancy tools. He just built really cool jet fighters.
I love it. Oh, I love it. I love the reference.
But
Go ahead.
at the same time, when model-based systems engineering rolled out, I actually think it's a game changer. It brought a common language to describe complex systems. We suddenly have a new way to visualize and validate our design most of the time earlier than we ever could have. I don't have to fight with Word anymore because formatting was really hard sometimes.
Yes, I hear you. I hear you.
And then the tool also allowed us to automate rules and make sure models are consistent. It's easier to check and make sure that everyone is following the same style guide, the same type of modeling guideline, stereotype. But at the same time, I really don't think that's the only way to do systems engineering. I love the fact that I can write on whiteboard and actually understand how the system works with other people.
Yeah. That's so interesting you say that because we had a LinkedIn Live event. It was a week and a half ago, maybe a little bit longer ago, but we had 3 systems engineering folks on it. And, it was really interesting. The conclusion that they came to is that MBSE is a tool in the toolbox, but it's one of many. Sometimes document-based systems engineering is the right way to go. Even though formatting can get a little hairy, sometimes it might be the right thing for that specific program. And it made me think about, okay, you got to have this some kind of way to figure out what tools and processes to apply to what is in front of you at the hand. And sometimes it's a whiteboard. So is that kind of what you're seeing and experiencing as well?
Definitely. And early on, we talk about how do I help young engineers or experienced engineers to move forward as a technical leader. Applying the right tool is just as important, and knowing what they're looking forward to, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So when you have worked on programs where MBSE has been the way to do it, what have been some of anything about the getting people up to speed on it, and then benefits that you've realized from using an MBSE approach? Can you talk a little bit about that and what your experience has been?
So my experience with MBSE is actually a good and bad.
Okay.
A lot of the goods come from how everyone know the language and it get to a common understanding faster when people know the language. And the bad part is I have just as many engineers, I have just as many systems engineer who doesn't speak that language.
Oh, wow. Yep. Okay.
And the crazy thing is, as a chief engineer, I work with all kinds of engineers. I'm not going to expect a mechanical engineer to know how to speak SysML. And when I work with a quality engineers, I don't expect him to speak SysML. So
Yeah.
I'll have to find a better way to communicate with them when MBSE expect you to speak the language.
Yeah.
So whenever I have that type of challenge, I just take the SysML element out and really talk about systems engineering because they understand engineering. We understand how to define systems. We understand system thinking and how do I look forward to a system design with tests in mind. We think about how this organizational structures and the changes to the organization structures is going to impact operations. So my quality engineers actually know what I'm talking about. And then even in our transformation story, how do we think about productivity with people in mind? And all of these really just bring system thinking back into how do I do better without stepping in a pitfall because I know it's going to be right in front of me.
Yeah. You can see the pothole on the road as you're coming down the way. I want to go back real quick when you talked about mechanical engineers, quality engineers, and that lines up really well with research that we've done recently. So we conducted a survey-based study, and we asked kind of what are your top uses of an MBSE model? And we expected things like traceability, developing architectures, V&V will be kind of the highest cited things, answers for that question. But actually, they weren't. The top ones were collaboration and coordination. And the ones that I just mentioned a second ago, traceability, architecture, those things, I think they kind of represent version 1.0 of expectations. And I think a lot of organizations for the systems engineers in an ivory tower, they're able to do that. That's not too far out of reach. But coordination and collaboration across engineering disciplines, that's a little bit harder to realize. I mean, to the point you just talked about, because it is very, very complex.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's go a little bit further into MBSE. So we talked about coordination and collaboration. We talked about other roles, kind of getting access and understanding it, and how do you navigate that? Asking quality engineers and mechanical engineers to use an MBSE tool to open up the diagram and navigate it and maybe look at code. Maybe a step too far. I love the shake of your head. No. So how do you navigate that? Have you tried pairing it with a PLM solution? Is there a way to kind of get that out of the tool and make it more accessible? Like, how do you get this broader audience more engaged with the MBSE model? Or is it, don't try to at all, put it into a different format?
I don't force them to do MBSE. That's what systems engineers are for. That's why I have systems engineering and I learn those things, right? The collaborations portions of it, if there's a message we need to bring and there are specific things we need to communicate, then use the right tool. And MBSE in that case may not be the right tool, and it's okay. So I think one of the interesting approach I'm seeing, especially in this era of AI, right? There are a lot of tools and demos and things in the ether right now, as far as I know, that help you use systems thinking without the modeling, without the requirement verifications, but it give you what you need for the next step.
Yeah.
And for the first time in my life, regardless if it's working with mechanical engineers or reliability engineers, or even better, a systems engineer that doesn't speak SysML, I am able to have them share the informations based on their knowledge, based on their domain knowledge, and bring it back into a model because of different type tools. And it's super exciting.
That's great. That's great. I mean, people are exploring so many applications of using AI. And so I've seen people talking about, okay, let's use AI on top of document-based systems engineering because it makes it more viable.
Mhm.
I've seen people talking about using AI to actually write code, SysML 2.0 code, and drive an MDSC model as a way for productivity gains. I have not heard anybody talk about, except you, about using AI to basically generate a systems engineering model that is not MBSE based, which I think is what you said. Is that fair? Or did I get that wrong? Okay.
But so if you think about what you just mentioned, right? You can use AI to, in a sense, convert what a mechanical engineer is trying to tell me that I don't quite understand. Or if I don't read GD&T as well as the mechanical engineers, I can feed it into the model. All of a sudden, I am speaking a mechanical engineer's language without knowing GD&T.
Wow. Interesting. So almost like AI is a translator between
It is a
engineering domains.
translator. We talk again.
That's great. That's great. So, yeah, so talk to me a little bit more about that. Like, is it just something you're seeing and you think it has a lot of potential? Are you experimenting with it? Like, what's the state of play here?
So definitely experimenting with it. I don't know if it's a norm. It's definitely not something that I have put into practice and through the process and become a real change agent on that front yet. But the explorations and experimenting with AI has been super exciting.
Yeah.
Over the weekend, I would literally I will open cursor and start coding. One of the interesting things that I did for a personal hobby was I'm a scuba diver and I love taking underwater pictures. And when I take underwater pictures, it can have a lot of videos, a lot of pictures, and a lot of data that usually doesn't look very well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we use the tool to prototype and build a photo processing program and basically filter out all the interesting frame. And I might have like 5 pictures out of an hour of diving instead of saving 50 gigabyte of videos. So
Yeah.
the productivity and the memory saving is great.
Yeah. I think it is a fascinating progression where it's democratizing people's ability to develop software and code to do what they specifically needed to do. And I think it's fascinating on that front. I wonder about in a work environment how that might lead you to too much variances from a standard methodology or process or practice that has been used in a company maybe for decades and it's proven. Mm. What's your take there? I mean, it seems like there's a lot of potential. for really, really great things, but also some risk as well.
Definitely. That's why we're experimenting, right? So that we know how the technology is used, just like we mentioned, MBSE is a tool. At some point, MBSE is a tool and is great at doing traceability and verification architecture. It's not so great for me to bring it in front of my mechanical engineers trying to understand, are we speaking the same language? And I see the same thing at AI and all the tools that we are trying to do right now. And we're definitely early in the stage to experiment and see what the technology can do. And I'm sure we'll find methods of very interesting applications that should be applied to the rest of the systems. And that's when we go back to our whiteboard and talk about, hey, throughout this entire process, where do we think this AI technology should be applied? And
Yeah.
I see everyone should be doing that in the near future.
Yeah. No, that's a great perspective. And I think you're dead on right there. Um, something I'm noticing out of this conversation, at least, the places that you've worked, is it sounds like there have been dedicated competencies around change agents and being able to roll out initiatives effectively and supporting it with, things like you said, training programs. It also sounds like, well, maybe I didn't hear that. In some organizations, there are competencies around AI and explicitly figuring out the applications that are right for that company. And other organizations that are just like, here are the tools, go play, figure out what works for you, have fun, let us know how it goes. I'd love to hear more from you about both of those kind of competencies and the importance, or whether it's not important, to kind of have a formal competency around each of those in turn.
So I think both of the methodology has its pros and cons. With AI being so new and kind of unpredictable, letting it loose sounds like a bad idea.
Fair.
So I do like the more cautious approach where we play with the technology, trying to understand it and trying to find the right applications with metrics and mapping it out, and then get some guardrail before you roll it out. That makes me feel better.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Makes a ton of sense. What about the change agent competency? How critical, or do you think it is critical to have some type of formal internal competency and program for change agents and a way to roll out initiatives? What are your thoughts there?
I never thought about that. That's interesting. So working with people in leadership is very intuitive to me. Like I mentioned, I see a lot of my mentor and trusted advisors see strengths in me before I know about them. So having a process as their change agents definitely would be a better way to bring out the next generations of change agents. But at the same time, I think change agents, at least some of the change agents, are very creative. I'm not sure if I am like the most creative type, but if you put a process of those people, they probably don't get it. And that's probably where you said, hey, is there a benefit to just let them loose and maybe wheel them back in when we need to?
Maybe. I don't think we've quite figured out what the right answer is there yet, but yeah, it is interesting because we interview a lot of change agents on this podcast, and there are so many different skills and capabilities that I've seen across change agents. You just mentioned one a second ago, like being able to understand your executives and what they want to accomplish and be able to kind of connect, right? Not everybody can do that. That's actually a pretty rare skill. And it sounds like you've been able to do that quite well. Kind of being a problem solver, understanding technology, having soft skills and being able to communicate, and not only communicate, engage people that are resisting, understand why, and then winning them over to your side and having them invest in the initiative. I mean, that's a whole other skill set. So I think change agents are this unique, they're like a unicorn, right? They have this unique combination of those skills and traits that allows them to be successful in the midst of those initiatives. So does jive with your experiences, number one? And number two, are there any other traits and characteristics of change agents that you also think is important?
That definitely resonate. And I do think one of the key characteristics of a change agent is the ability to connect with people, the ability to see what are the problems that makes it so annoying. You have to solve it. And that's how you make sure that you connect with them and able to communicate and have a common goal. So let's say it again to make it very clear. I think one of the traits of a change agent is the ability to identify with the others and communicate to achieve a common goal. And building that relationship and building the coalitions is going to help us pave a way to affiliate your solutions so that you can have a lasting cultural change. That's how you make sure that it's going to stay.
You frame that so spectacularly. That's great. I want to print it out and put it on my wall. It's great. Really, really wonderful. Okay, good. Excellent. Another question I'd like to ask you is, we have lots of change agents that listen to this podcast, and they're always looking for guidance. And there can be signals that sometimes when you're asked to lead an initiative, there are signs that like, hey, this is a good situation. You're set up for success. There are situations when you're not. They're like, oh, okay, this looks a little hairy, right? Maybe it's not the best thing to step into. Well, it would be great if you could give some guidance to the listeners and the viewers around like, okay, here are some things to look out for. This is when you're in a good situation. This is when you're not in a good situation. You need to have another conversation with that executive. What are your thoughts there? I see a wry smile on your face. I mean, you have to be careful because you have to navigate the politics, right? And also you're dealing with an executive that's asked you to take on more responsibilities. It's a difficult conversation, right? So it can be.
Yes. So I see a initiative is set up to fail because the initiative forget about the most important part of an initiative is the outcome and the people. And executives are usually really good at understand what the outcome should be. But if we forget about the people, you will never get them to the finish line. You will never get to a solution that will make a lasting change.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily see it in politics. Maybe it is. I'm sure there are plenty. But if we forget about the people, everything gets harder.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that wonderfully said. Really, really like how you framed it there. All right. Last question. Really important one. If you could redesign anything in the world, even a better mousetrap, what would it be? I'm springing this one on you, but It's okay. I think
Yes, you did.
you're up to the task. Anything in the world, what would it be?
Well, right now, with AI agents and all the LLM and technology in the world, if there is one thing that I want to change, I would love my earpod to have a real-time translator that can speak all the languages and we can communicate better. And that will be a transformational way to improve communications and get everyone more on board.
It's a great idea. I think it's wonderful. You should start up a side gig and figure that out. You got Claude Code and Codex, right? You could do that.
Of course we do. Like, these are so cool of a technology. I didn't even know I can code 4 months ago. As a matter of fact, I turned on the terminal and I was scared. But now I have a scuba diving photo processing tool because of Code Assistant.
So cool. That's awesome. Well, Tracy, thank you so much for your time today. Wonderful conversation. I think viewers and listeners are going to get a lot of help, a lot of guidance out of this. Greatly appreciate it. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Chad. An honor to be on the show.
This is Chad again. Thanks for listening to the show. In these episodes, lots of discussion online, and maybe even your company. Hopefully you're hearing the same thing that we're hearing. The biggest challenge to engineering transformation isn't technology focused. It's actually people-centered. As part of the Founders Council, we're developing research, training, organizational assessments, and insights to upskill and enable change agents. That sounds like where you need to be. Come book a meeting with me at lifecycleinsights.com. Take care and talk soon.